Greetings everyone, and welcome to this second in our series of AMINZ Doing Business Better webinars. I'm Sue Wells, the Executive Director of the Arbitrators and Mediators Institute in New Zealand, and today we're going to be joined by four of our fellow mediators, who are fellows, to discuss what's happening in the world of mediation as we move towards doing business online. Let me start by introducing you to Mediator of the Year 2019, Mark Kelly. Good morning to you, Mark.
Morning, Sue, and hi everybody.
Mark's going to be focusing this morning on commercial mediations and what's happening as those are being undertaken online. Mark, I understand that's already been happening with a fair degree of success too.
Yes, it has. I've been mediating online and it's been going well, and I know that other commercial mediators like Nina Curry and Hayden Wilson have been right across this technology and working well with folk on it too.
Excellent. Look forward to hearing more about that shortly, Mark. Then we'll be discussing with AMINZ Vice President, Nicola Hartfield. Morning, Nicola.
Morning.
And also with fellow AMINZ fellow, Samantha de Coning, family mediation and the challenges of working in the online space. And Samantha and Nicola, I know at the moment the challenges are unique, fresh, and happening every day.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
After that, Rosemarie Brown, who hosts our supervision panel. Rosemarie, good morning.
Good morning.
We'll be discussing professional supervision and the things that you need to think about as you work in a very strange and a difficult environment.
Yeah.
So good morning to all of you. We're going to run this effectively as a panel session and a Q&A. So those of you who are with us on the webinar live at the moment, good morning and welcome to you. Feel free to pose your questions to us. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a little button down here which says Q&A. You can just float over that, pop your questions in through there. There is also a little chat button. And as you can see, you can pop a little message. Here's a little message, which will float up. You'll be able to see that, and that question there will show up for all, in that case, all panelists and attendees. So if there's something you'd like our panelists to address as we're going, feel free to pop your questions in there, and throughout the course of the next near on hour, we'll do that for you. Right, turning first up to, did I mention Mediator of the Year 2019, Mark Kelly? Mark.
Hi.
Hi. So, commercial mediations. Talk to us about what's happening and the things that you've observed to date.
Thanks, Sue. You know, these are obviously the strangest and most extraordinary times for all of us. And, you know, and the commercial mediation space no less so. And I think that things have sort of been happening very quickly. I mean, on one hand, online mediation has been around for a while, has been growing for a while and championed by great organisations like Mike Heron's CODA, and folk have been using it. And I've certainly mediated online previously as well. But since COVID-19, it's rather than a sort of possibility, a sort of option in certain circumstances, it's really become the only way for us to conduct commercial mediations. And so, you know, and I think that's been exciting in some ways, even, you know, given the awfulness of the circumstances, but also a real challenge for folk. But really cool to see how a lot of people have adapted really quickly and got across it. And I'm talking about mediators and participants, got across it and got into it. And so I guess that's the headline. It's happening. It's definitely sort of happening in New Zealand and happening worldwide, that more and more mediations are being conducted online.
What are some of the challenges, Mark, that you're finding as you're undertaking a commercial mediation online, as opposed to the challenges you would have found in a face-to-face environment?
I think that, you know, perhaps the greatest challenge is the newness of the format for folk. And so certainly for me, I've been looking to address that by front-loading quite a lot of the process, far more so than I would with a face-to-face mediation. So I've been getting folk to counsel to video conference with me ahead of the mediation, and then having dry run practice sessions with each group, or each group within a party that's attending the mediation, so that people are more confident and comfortable with the tech. So that's a sort of a preparatory layer that is more than what would have been, what I would have had in a face-to-face mediation, and there's quite a bit of detail to that. And then the mediations themselves have some real differences as well. Obviously, you don't have that sort of personal immediacy, and there are some slightly different sort of dynamics in terms of the flow of the day. And as mediator, you're sort of looking to be across that, and there are other things you have to do as a mediator that you might not do in the face-to-face dynamic. So it is different, but not unmanageably so. And I think that's one of the cool things about, as I say, this dynamic is that folk are nimble, and we've been able to sort of develop and get used to it and adapt quite quickly.
Thanks for that. So Nicola and Samantha, and Rosemarie as well, because you're all expert in this space too. What Mark's talking about there with front-loading mediation, are you finding that's the same issue in the family mediation space?
Absolutely. And like in commercial, families used online tools for a long time because we've had, we have to take into account safety issues in 2-location cases. But the front loading is definitely an issue in my mediation practice now, and there's such a huge range of people's abilities to use the technology or get access to the technology that this creates quite a different power imbalance in the mediation, which as mediators we have to address well before we look at any of the actual issues in the mediation.
Those same, as mediators, one of our most important roles is always about designing a safe process for families, and this is the same situation, making sure that parties are safe and feel safe at the virtual table rather than a real face-to-face table is really important. Spending time going through those concerns before the mediation starts, addressing them and coming up with, I suppose, realistic plans and ways to deal with them for families is really important. And as Nicola said, it does take more time, and Mark, you said the same thing, it takes more time and more preparation. For us, it's always so important that people come to mediation ready to talk, and we really need to think about what that means in this new environment.
So what does that mean in this new environment?
I think for the families that I'm meeting with, it's about how am I going to have a conversation, first of all, where I can't see him or her. So it's the idea of the person being far away. It's new, the technology is new, it's stressful for people. And I think that they're already so stressed by the newness of everything else that sometimes asking people to do one more new thing is really, really difficult. And as mediators, we're finding the same thing in our practice. We're having to do something that potentially we may not have done before. And our parties, but we still need to be able to be confident enough to take our parties with us. And so it's a new conversation about how we're going to do that and address all those concerns.
So is one of the big questions then that as mediators you need to turn your minds to something around the difference of ethics in operating in this environment? I mean, do you need, there's always a question around competence, isn't there, around whether or not a person should actually be taking part in mediation. Is that more heightened at the moment? Is it different? What are the tests that you put in place around that?
One thing around competence is our own competence. So we have to be competent to drive the mediation in a new way. But also, we're all facing grief with this COVID-19. And in family mediations, our parents are also facing an existing grief of separation. And so their competence and ability and capacity to mediate is even more challenged because they've got loss upon loss. And now they're having to mediate perhaps in a closer way with their ex-partner than they would like to. So talking through the actual issues of when we do use Zoom, what room will the other party be in? What might we see on the wall behind them? Might we see their ex-partner? Very practical conversations need to happen to allow their anxiety to lower as much as we can. We need to be so much more transparent, I think, and creative around how we're going to do these mediations to help them to have the capacity to participate, because the bar of participation, I feel, has gone up significantly.
Samantha, Gordon has asked a question in response to a point that you made earlier. Gordon asks, Samantha said not all parties could see each other. Could she explain, please?
I'm trying to think. That's a good question. I think for me what it means is when I'm mediating by Zoom, and it is a wonderful platform, and it's allowing us to do things that we wouldn't have been able to do at this time, which is continue to help families move forward. But on Zoom, with technology, perhaps it's because I'm not a digital native. I'm a bit older than that, but it's not my first language, so to speak. And so sometimes I feel that, and like our parties, I have to work extra hard to be aware and to really tune in to what's happening with my parties as they're going through those conversations. So in a face-to-face, I think for me it's easier, but on Zoom it can be challenging to maintain the connection with the people that I'm working with.
Right.
And sometimes I think for parties as well, they're also feeling that there's this not barrier, but maybe it's a new lens that they're having to speak through or cope with, and they might not, and it's tiring. I think today after this webinar, I think we're all going to feel quite tired, but it's maintaining the engagement with all of this other stuff that's going on. And I think that's what I mean about seeing is that it's the connection that we really have to work hard at maintaining.
So that's, I'm guessing, something also around being able to read the room. Is there a different way that you read the room when you're on Zoom or using what kind of technology?
And as mediators, we're always wanting to make sure that our parties are safe. And so that creates an extra responsibility for us. Yes. I don't know if that answers Gordon's question.
I'm sure Gordon will tell us if it doesn't, just by using the Q&A or the chat button that's at the bottom of the screen. Thank you. There's another question that's come in from Fiona, who asks, how do you best ensure privacy, i.e. instilling some confidence about who's in the room? Who'd like to take this one? Panel?
I don't mind if
Rosemary?
so with regards to the privacy, that can be quite a big issue, and particularly with family and others, even in commercial, there's not a great deal of trust. And I know that for people who've been coming and going as to whether or not they're happy to do mediation online through lockdown, most of them are worried about the privacy of partners who may be hearing, of partners who may be in the room, but you can't see in the camera. So one of the things that I have done is, if people are really quite concerned about that, we just reschedule. The other thing you can do is I watch where people's eyes go. If they are constantly going to a particular place in a room, and people's face change when they are talking to somebody, And so, or they're trying to communicate, or someone's trying to communicate with them. So I think I keep an extra vigilant eye on facial expression, where the eyes are going. I wear headphones, as you will all note, and these are really good quality headphones. And the reason that I do this these days is because they pick up a pin drop. And so if there is anything in the room where the other person's people are, I can pick up the tiniest little sound, and I'll actually ask. I'll just go, is there someone in the room with you? Has someone come in? Or whatever, is there anybody else there that can overhear? And that's how I've been dealing with it. If the other person thinks that something's going on because they know that person a lot better than we do as the mediators, then if they're concerned, I'll go into separate rooms, and then we will discuss what they want to do. Do they want to continue? Do they want to just reschedule for another time? And just look about how we can make this safe so privacy is maintained and confidentiality is maintained.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Rosemary. Panel, does anyone else have something they'd like to add to that question?
In the family realm, we've also got privacy around the children and the children not hearing, and of course mediations are happening at home now. And so again, we need to be really flexible about having smaller Zoom sessions, perhaps when children can be away at the other end of the house watching Frozen or something like that, but just maybe half an hour, 40 minutes over a period of days. Also, some goodwill prior to the mediation is really useful, where there might be one parent who has an additional partner in their bubble, and so they might wait to have the mediation when the children are in that person's bubble, leaving the other parent who is on his or her own to be able to mediate without the children there. It takes, this is part of the front loading that Mark talked about. It's not only about the technology, it's about how do you manage the children in the same household. And you know, safety has to come first. So quite a lot of shuttle mediation might need to happen as well, because it's just not going to be possible to have a joint conversation with children.
Mark, is that privacy issue the same in a commercial mediation setting?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously there are different dynamics, and there may not be the sort of same interpersonal sensitivities within specific homes. But privacy is nonetheless absolutely vital to what we do, and confidentiality. And I certainly agree with what the other panelists have been saying about that. What I would add to that, and I suspect the other panelists very much do this as well, is that I think it's necessary and really helpful to add agreement to that in your agreement to mediate. And by that I mean, in my agreement to mediate, you know, I have a specific clause in relation to video conferencing in which the parties agree that they and they only will participate, in which they agree that they will arrange themselves in a way that best gives others confidence that they are participating in private, and in which they actually have a positive obligation to flag to others if, you know, a new person has entered the room. So all of that, it sounds a bit prescriptive and tough, but it's not really. It's just sort of part of, you know, the sort of the myriad clauses that we have in an agreement to mediate. But what that does is helps, I think, focus parties' minds on the issue and the importance of it. And it gives you a reference point as mediator, you know, should you need it if there's sort of, if folk aren't doing as they had agreed to do.
Mark, would you be prepared to share that clause with other AMINZ members?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. We'll touch base after this, and with your permission, I'll pop it into Kōrero, which is going out later this week.
No problem.
Thank you very much. So we have another question from Kate on family mediation, and then We've got 3 which are all around the technicality or the technicals of using various platforms. So perhaps, and of course your questions are welcome, just keep them coming. You can use the chat button or the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So Kate Wiseman asks, it seems to me that online mediation allows people who would otherwise be fearful to engage in family mediation. Do any of the panelists have any comments on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that that's, you know, I think, Nicola, when you started, you said that Zoom and family mediation, you know, have been sort of working together for quite a while. And that's one of the reasons why, is when parties don't want to be in the same room physically, but they still want to have those conversations. We have used Zoom before for safety reasons. And so it's not a new concept. Around, you know, around that idea. So, but at the same time, I also find that some of my parties really want that face-to-face conversation. They really, you know, they're doing Zoom now, but they do like the idea of having a face-to-face conversation with their partner. And I think that that could be because of the reasons I spoke about earlier. The feeling that perhaps they're not going to be able to have that depth of conversation through Zoom. But what we're finding with mediation at the moment is that once people get over that initial idea and they start talking, the technology fades away. And it really is 2 parents having really important conversations about their children.
So are you finding, sorry to interrupt, Samantha, are you finding through your practice at the moment that you're getting more uptake in mediation because people are feeling less intimidated?
No, I don't. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that at the moment, parents need to have conversations about their children, and Zoom enables them to still have those conversations rather than leaving things during the lockdown period. And I think that that at the end of the day, once people start speaking, whether they, and we see this with our face-to-face mediations as well, where parents are really anxious before they come, they need a lot of work getting ready. And when they sit down and they start actually talking to each other, you know, that's really where that magic of mediation starts to happen. And that still happens with Zoom. You know, once people get over the pushing of the buttons and all the rest of it, that real conversation starts happening.
Nicola and Rosemarie, what are your thoughts on that?
Kate, the Zoom won't take away people's fear. I wish it did. And but it does help to distance, I guess, somebody that you don't want to be so close up and personal with, like in the face-to-face room. I think we mustn't be lulled into a sense of safety when we do Zoom. And the fear that people have is far more complex than just seeing somebody in close proximity. It's also about the threat and the retribution and the things that are said in a conversation that might seem safe because they've got the mediator there, you know, and we can mute and unmute and put people in breakout rooms. We can't guarantee safety outside the mediation room, whether it's face-to-face or Zoom. So parties still have to be careful, and the layers that make up somebody's fear around a partner or ex-partner is still going to be there, and they still have to be aware of what they say in mediation. And very practically speaking, you know, make a lot of use of breakout rooms if there's a high level of fear, or do the whole mediation in shuttle using breakout rooms. So it doesn't take away any kind of threat that can happen between parties.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if sometimes also we become a bit film producery like. So when people first come into Zoom, I actually have a chat to them about whether we can see their face. So quite often people think they're doing the right thing by sitting with a big well-lit window behind them. And I'm going, I can't see your face. And if I can't see your face, that's one of my only cues of knowing how you're going. And so I just ask them to sort of move around in the room or change room if that's possible. And that's a key thing, I think, to do when we're on Zoom. The other thing that I'm finding that I'm doing a lot more of is that I am checking in one-on-one with people during Zoom, simply because we can only see so many cues. It's harder to get the vibe of a person and to feel the energy from a person. Like right now, I'm moving my hands when they're up here, but you can't see me moving my hands underneath where the screen is. So it's important that, you know, and I know we had a bit of a practice session ourselves with Sue the other day, and Sue was talking about sometimes people can feel the eye roll of the other party even though they haven't necessarily seen it, and that sense for the parties is still there, but we're not picking up on those cues because we're not in the room with them, so we're not necessarily picking up all of their body language. So it's key for me in my online sessions to make sure I'm having shorter joint sessions if they are joint, and that I'm talking in separate sessions fairly frequently. And I just want to talk about separate sessions if that's all right, Sue.
Yes, absolutely. We have a number of questions actually coming up about that, Rosemary. I wonder if you might just hold that for a second, and we'll pop through them, because that really does take us beautifully into the technical sessions. So here we are. The first of our technical questions is actually for Mediator of the Year 2019, Mark Kelly. And it's again from Kate Wiseman, a practical question. How does Mark arrange his camera so that it looks as if he is looking straight at us?
Thanks, Kate. That credits me with more technical expertise than I really have. But I've part of the upskilling for this is, you know, I've been reading around and practicing a bit, and I've done a few of these now. And so I think you can just sort of train yourself a bit more to look at your camera. I would say it's something that comes super naturally to me, but it's something that I do try to do, and hopefully that gives you a slightly more sort of present visage, if that's a thing. And I think it's, you know, this was a point that was made a little bit earlier as well. It is worth practicing and getting yourself well set up, just hopefully in terms of your room and the lighting and all of those sorts of things. Yeah.
So Mark, just out of interest, you're using your tablet or something, and you're using the camera on the screen of your tablet?
Yeah, I've just got a laptop, and now this is somewhat, I guess, sensitive territory, dare I say it, but on Zoom, you folk may or may not have figured out, there's actually one of the options you have on it is called enhanced appearance. So, so this is the enhanced appearance. This is as good as it gets.
Well, Mark, if I revert to my Susan Sells shopping presenter mode, I could perhaps suggest to you also just a touch of natural glow. A little of that will do you.
Hey, and just while I'm chatting, I did want to pick up on a couple of things that the other panelists were saying, which I thought were really interesting and really resonated with me, just about participation. And perhaps in the commercial context. One thing that I've noticed is very much that people gain in confidence through the day using the platform. And I think that was something that other folk were saying. And perhaps for people watching and listening to this who are somewhat anxious about it, you know, and anxious about either being a mediator by Zoom or participating in a mediation by Zoom, I can hopefully give you some comfort to say that in those that I've done, you can visibly see confidence improving through the day. And by the end of the day, folk are going, oh, hey, this was pretty good. And the other thing that I would say is, you know, the perhaps particularly with a larger group of people, actually one of the benefits of online mediation, arguably there is a bit of a democratization of the process. And I mean that in a couple of ways. One is, I think it's probably less easy for dominant personalities to dominate if you are but 1/26th of a screen, for instance. And I also think that for lay participants, and I'm thinking perhaps about homeowners in a leaky homes claim or an earthquake claim, I suspect in some ways it might actually be a less intimidating dynamic than walking into a room full of folk with suits and, files and the like. So sorry, I'm sort of tracking back slightly to what we were talking about before, but as we were talking, I was saying, oh yeah, that really that aspects of that resonate with me too.
Thank you. We have a couple of people raising similar questions, and a question which actually crossed my mind before as well. When you're in a mediation with Zoom, do the parties have the ability to record the mediation session?
Okay. You need to, yes is the short answer, unless you change your settings and keep full control. So for family mediators, Simon Dadley Moore has put together a step-by-step walk us through all the settings that we need to have so that as mediators we have control. Same for instance when parties arrive in the main meeting room, and in the waiting room they're already on mute, so they can't engage with each other before the mediator unmutes them. So those are the settings that you can create and would have already loaded up beforehand.
And are those, is that information readily accessible to everyone, Nicola, or is that only for practitioners working with a certain entity?
Samantha, you could answer this from perhaps.
Yeah, we have developed that information, but a lot of it, if you are using Zoom and you go onto the Zoom website, there are a whole lot of little links and little video links that give you information about how to do your settings, how to do separate meetings, and they all link you to 2 or 3 little minute video slots, and they'll give you all the information that you need on the Zoom website. It's probably one of the most user-friendly support websites that I've encountered. Zoom also has the little chat bot, and you can type in your questions and someone will actually give you an answer really, really quickly. So in terms of a supported platform, the information is readily available to everybody. So it's really, and we've even had mediators who have been in the middle of a mediation and have got into a bit of trouble and have gone onto the little Zoom website to the side and actually typed in their question, and someone has almost immediately come back and helped them. Brilliant. So I think that, Zoom, which is one of the reasons why so many of us use it, is because it is so user-friendly and there's so much help available.
And if anyone does have any cheat sheets that they wish to share with the other AMINZ members, do feel free and we will help circulate those throughout the membership. That would be gratefully accepted, I'm sure.
I think, on that recording issue, I think Nicola's absolutely right. I think it's important as host to disable recording. And again, it's another point I think which can be addressed in your agreement to mediate, is that you actually have parties agree that they will not record the video conference. And I think that that's quite important, that everybody's on a level playing field in that regard.
Yes.
I was just sorry, Sue, before you go on. One of the important things is for those people who haven't used a lot of Zoom, a lot of what we have just been talking about in the panel is not available if you are accessing your Zoom via your app. So if to get all of your settings, you actually need to log into the zoom.us account and sign in on your either laptop or your computer, and then you are able to access all of your settings. And most of the settings that we've been talking about are under the title of meeting. Some of them are under the meeting advanced, but you get to the advanced via the meeting setting. But if you are worried, everything that Samantha said is very true.
And also the thank you, Rose. I forgot about that. That's a really good point. The other thing is that once you've set those on your Zoom when you've logged in, those will remain there until you go back in and change them. So you can confidently then go onto the app, book meetings, and know that those settings are going to be there for each of the meetings that you book. Is that true?
No,
No?
There is one word of warning. If you use Zoom not just for mediation, but also maybe for family meetings, etc., if you are setting up a Zoom meeting that is not for clients and maybe amongst colleagues or with friends and family, you are likely to change some of your settings as you're setting up the meeting, because there are some settings that we can change as we're scheduling a meeting that are in that list. Anytime you change any of the settings that you changed when you logged in for your work mediations, whatever you last used to schedule a mediation will automatically then default for your next scheduling of a mediation. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. As a matter for myself, whenever I schedule a Zoom meeting, I always log in. You know, I always just go through the checklist anyway, because as I said, technology is not always my friend, and I forget if I've changed something. So, so as Rosemarie said, I always do it from the main login and not from my app.
Just one other thing too, that may give everyone who's listening a bit of assurance. As soon as somebody hits record, whether you've agreed to it to not happen or not, but they have overridden it because they're better technology-wise than we are, you can tell, because the record button will show on your screen. So just sort of keep a peripheral view on your screen, because you can see if somebody's muting, if they might be, you know, doing anything else that they're able to do, or that they have the ability to override us on. You will see that because it will come up somewhere in your screen.
I think we can see it at the moment on this screen.
Yes, we can.
Where I can see the little red light flashing.
Can I talk about private meetings?
Yes, certainly.
Just wanted to say there are two ways that you can do private meetings. One is what I used to do before Zoom had separate rooms, because I think that was possibly at a different level of payment, is I have asked people to leave a meeting, and then I text them when I want them to come back in, and because I've sent them the link, they just click on the link to come back in. So that is one way of doing it. So if you're not really technology savvy, then that's one way of doing it, and people don't mind. The good thing about that is that as the mediator, you've got a time where neither party realizes that you're actually on your own. So if you need a break and you want to or you want to look something up or ask a question on Zoom or just try something, both parties are actually sitting in their own place, and you are the only person on Zoom to do whatever you need to do. The other way to do it is under those settings, there's a rooms setting, and you can tell it how many rooms you want sent up for your mediation. And then you go into a meeting management, and that means I've picked the manual, so that means I manually assign people to a room, and that way I will put people in a room, and as the mediator you can just flick from room to room, even if you have more than 2 rooms, which you might have in a commercial mediation, or if there's 3 parties to a family dispute, or more than 2, you can do it that way, so everybody's in their own room, and then you can just move around them. You can also send a message to all of them in their separate room by sending a message, typing it in, and then it will display on each person's screen.
Thank you.
I found the breakout rooms actually work really, really well on Zoom. It's a great facility. It's really easy as mediator to get in and out of the breakout rooms, and to shift folk from main session to breakout room, and from, and to set up multiple breakout rooms. So if you want to have a short line out with counsel, you can do that really easily. And interestingly, I was talking before about sort of comfort levels. it's particularly at that point that I started noticing people getting more comfortable with the format. They think, oh, okay, this is what I'm used to. I'm in a room, I've got my clients here, and then I'm off to go and talk to, to someone separately, and it works really well.
One of the questions
I do with the breakout rooms that tend to make people feel a bit more relaxed is use the analogy of an office. So I'll say, I'm going to walk you down the hallway and we're going to go into your private room, and that might take a few seconds and it'll feel a bit longer because you're not actually doing the walking. And then we're going to walk back up the hallway and we're going to go into the meeting room. I'm going to open the door to the office at this time, and I'm going to close the door this time. And I think part of the skill and the creativity as mediators, we can use metaphor, and we can create a more connecting sort of language, even though it is online, and that seems to help people when they say, oh yeah, it was, I just imagined myself walking down a hallway and I know where I am now. And I think that really helps people as well, and to practice it before you get to a joint meeting, in your individual meetings, practice taking them into the meeting room is a great comfort to them and also to myself as I'm learning more about Zoom.
Can I ask if there have been a couple of questions that have popped up around caucus rooms and breakout rooms. In terms of the Zoom technology, are both those words referring to the same thing?
Yes.
Yeah, on Zoom it's called breakout rooms.
Okay, so if we, when we talk about using caucus in the mediation context, it's breakout room. That's the new Zoom. That's the new Zoom language for it.
Or some of us were using that anyway.
Right, and thank you. So we'd also refer to that as separate meetings.
Yes.
I guess if you're being really particular about it, I mean, a caucus is a meeting with the clients or the parties, whereas you might use breakout room for that, but you could also use a breakout room, say for instance, with a sort of private meeting with the lawyers, or a conversation with one lawyer or something like that. So I guess the breakout rooms are literally that. They're best viewed almost as a sort of the online version of just separate rooms in a building, and within which you can caucus or have private sessions or whatever word you want to use for that, and or have separate meetings with folk.
Will the participants coming to Zoom be observing the breakout rooms? That might be how do I frame this? What will they see on their screen? Will they see that there are breakout rooms available and there are people in each? What
No.
is it for them?
No, they only see the breakout room when the computer's telling them that we are putting them into one.
Yeah.
They also get shown on their screen that when you take them back to the main meeting room, that in 30 seconds or 20 seconds, and you can put the timer on if you want them to leave in 5 seconds. They will see the countdown, and that's also comforting for them. So they know that as they see the seconds count down, they will be back into the main meeting room again.
Yeah. And you can set the time in your settings as to how long it takes from when you give them the warning bell or the warning on their screen that you're coming back to the joint session. You can actually set the amount of time that's for.
And are these features which are part of the free Zoom, or do you have to pay to get these features?
I'm in a paid one, so I don't know about the free one. I think the free one is quite limited, and the free one also still only gives you 40 minutes of time before it cuts you off. So for those of us that are using Zoom in online work, it would pay for us to purchase the package. It is not very expensive compared to hiring a room. So because we're using it a lot, and you get to use it particularly at the moment as a way of staying in touch with other people too.
Kate is asking, is there any chance we can be shown how the breakout rooms work? As we haven't rehearsed that during this webinar, I don't know if anyone, I don't know that perhaps doing it now might be the best best idea trying to do it live, but Kate, what I would say is that any AMINZ member who would like to have a play round using Zoom, we're very happy to facilitate that. AMINZ has the paid edition of Zoom, and so we can invite you in. You can have a practice at hosting and having a play round. So if anyone would like to do that, drop me an email, Executive Director. No, actually use Institute @aminz.org.nz. I'll put that up for you in the Q&A. institute@aminz.org.nz. Here it is in your chat room now. And if you'd like to have a play around on the paid version of Zoom, we can set you up with that and also find you some friends to put into the mediation, and you can have a wee play around to your heart's content.
The other thing too is I actually used my kids, because I went from using Zoom on my device, which I found much easier because I could just touch the screen and move things where I wanted. But there are things like, for this presentation, I thought, and for some mediations, it's sometimes nicer to be able to have more access. So I moved to desktop/laptop. And so I use my kids. Great during lockdown if you have children at home, to get them to join, and you can then just split them into rooms and practice online and just do that. And also use your colleagues. We're all here to help each other. So you know, there will be other people that you can just phone or text or email and just go, do you mind helping me, or being some participants and practice? Because to be honest, we don't have to do anything as participants. We just hit the link and then you do what you want. We can still keep working. So we can still do what we were doing. So that's, I mean, we're all here to help each other, and I think we need to remember that. So just, you know, get your colleagues to help, as well as AMINZ have offered, you know, Sue has offered.
Thanks for that. Maria's just added, by the way, that as an FYI, Zoom has lifted the 40-minute limit on free basic accounts for people who'd like to use that. So thanks for that, Maria. I'm still not quite clear on the difference between the features that the basic account offers and the more substantial one.
A lot of the features, Sue, have to do with how many people you can Zoom in, like how many people you can have. But it's all on the Zoom link. They clearly define the...
Thank you. And Zoom, of course, is not the only platform that's being used at the moment. Trish asked earlier, what platforms are you all using? Do you have the Zoom where you can use separate rooms? And Trish also asks, will you consider using the new Mediation Dealmaker platform? Now, you may recall, if you saw our webinar, the last one, which we did, we met the team from Coda and Mediation, and they gave us quite a comprehensive back-end tour of their new Dealmaker platform, which had quite a lot of features in there. So perhaps once round at the moment, Samantha, Nicole, Rosemarie, for the relationship, the family mediation, what is the platform of choice for you at the moment?
At the moment, for me, I'm using Zoom, but also as well as phone and Skype and WhatsApp sometimes as well. I think it's important that you speak with your colleagues in your particular field, because each field of mediation is going to have different needs, which can be met by different platforms. So get together in your specialties and see what people are doing.
Thank you. Samantha?
We're using Zoom, and I feel that to me, it's one of the best and most stable platforms and gives me the functionality I need. But I always think about having a backup during my mediations. And usually the mobile phone is the backup. So if for some reason somebody's internet drops, or sometimes when people get or are very emotional, new learning flies out the window first, and they just can't think about how to send you a message or let you know that they need a break. So having the mobile phone as a backup, and I let my parties know that that I've got my phone next to me, that if they need to text me, they can, or if something happens, I can phone them and we can reconnect. I think that also helps with my anxiety, but also my party's anxiety in the mediation.
Thank you. What about you, Rosemary?
I've been using Zoom for a very long time, and the reason I changed to Zoom back in 2014 or 15 or wherever Zoom became a thing was because I was finding Skype too unstable. And also Skype was really difficult for people who had it but couldn't use it for multi-parties. And I have been known to have a very hybrid process where I've had a party on the phone and I've had them on speakerphone because they haven't been able to connect to the internet. I've had someone either on a device through FaceTime and they're on speaker and I'm talking to them both, or I've had someone on the computer and somebody on a phone, etc., etc. So I have been known to have multiple devices, to have multiple people being able to connect. Luckily, I also have an iPhone, which is really helpful because you can do phone conferencing on iPhone, and that's really helpful. But like Samantha and others, I do give people, I say to them, if you're struggling, you can always text me or email me because I have both of those things open and they're on silent, but I will see. And so if you are struggling with anything, text me or email me. And that can be quite helpful for people who are nervous even in the session and they totally forget how to use Zoom. So they'll leave the room and then they'll text you because they didn't know what to do. They couldn't find leave, or they didn't want to tell you, they wanted to talk to you on their own, so they've just left the room and then they'll just text you. So I think it's important.
Thank you. Mark, what about you as a commercial mediator? What's your platform of choice or platforms of choice at the moment?
I've been mediating on Zoom and I've been really impressed with it and really happy with it. But I do have a super open mind. I thought the iMediation stuff really exciting and all the more bespoke for mediation. And I'm aware that there's Microsoft Teams out there and Modron as well. And I think that part of our role in this new world is we've got to sort of get across this stuff and show a bit of leadership. So keep an open mind and keep looking at stuff. I'm certainly going to do that. But you want to use what works and what you're comfortable with, and probably it's also important to bear in mind what your participants are comfortable with. And that's probably more important, if you like, what they are able to manage, what they're best able to do, how they're best able to roll. So I think be sensitive to that as well.
Thank you, Mark. I know that Zoom did say, when I looked at it some time ago, that it's best not to use it unless you've got fibre broadband. And here in my little cabin in the woods in Island Bay, we're still on old school wire. So my broadband here is not perhaps as stable as it should be for really good high def Zoom. And I guess those might be some of the considerations that mediators would look at when you're dealing with parties, is even just really basic stuff around inequity of access in terms of stability of the connection.
I think it can be very overwhelming stepping into this world of online. I've certainly felt completely overwhelmed with all the different offers and platforms and things that my colleagues here and overseas are doing. And I think my advice would be to just choose one and get familiar with it, and just upskill one skill at a time, and to practice amongst friends and colleagues. You can never get any worse. That was the most comforting thing that I said to myself when I began. There's no way I can get worse at this. And this is going to be around for a long time. We might never go back to quite the same way that we mediate. So there's going to be plenty of time for the sand to settle and for us to, in a more relaxed way, pick up different platforms that and use 2 or 3 platforms. If we're teaching, we might use a certain platform. If we're mediating, we might use another platform. But I think there's going to be time for us to do that. And this isn't the time. This is the time to just steady ourselves and get familiar with one platform and upskill enough so that we're capable to do the job that we want, you know, we want to do. And be patient with that a little bit.
Thank you, Nicola. That's great. Lawrence just adding at the end there, wondering whether the panel's considered using Teams. And I think, Nicola, your comments in there, basically saying pick one, stay with it and learn it. I know for what we're doing at the Institute, we're checking out everything as we go. So, and using different things because our different partners that we engage with, some only use Skype, some only use Teams, some only use Zoom. And at the moment, one of the things is that we are all having to learn a little bit more about the areas which I think some of us assumed we could safely leave to our young adult children. So, but yeah, upskilling. So I think we're just about at the point where the conversations are beginning to dry up. The Imperial Dalek Emperor has just advised that they have to go as they have a doctor's appointment to go to. Nice. So what you did just there. We have a question coming in on construction contracts. We have another question starting to come in on whether or not we'd be able to do a fishbowl with a mediator showing us exactly how Zoom works. The answer to that is absolutely yes. And we will program that in. We have a slot coming up next week as part of our Doing Business Better series on arbitration. There is some very, very interesting work happening in that space, particularly around where emergency arbitration is being used at the moment. We will definitely program a fishbowl session for AMINZ members, a free session for AMINZ members, paid one perhaps for non-members, showing how Zoom works. Unless there are any final questions, I'll nip quickly once around the panel, get your parting thoughts, and then I think we can all head away for a lunchtime relax. So Samantha, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I think what we've heard today is that Zoom is, well, whatever platform you choose is great. Get comfortable with it, help your parties get comfortable with it. And the most important thing is that we're able to continue to do the work that we do at this time, and continuing to help families is really important, or parties in commercial mediations. Helping people move forward is why we do what we do. And I, for one, think I'm really lucky that I can still continue to do the work that I love.
Thank you. Nicola.
Yeah, I'll finish with that we as mediators, we're really resilient. We're used to change. We're used to difficulty. We're used to connecting with people who are stuck, who feel disempowered. This is our bread and butter. This is what we do. So remember that as the challenges come towards us, that this is what we're good at. It's a time for being really creative. It's a time for being really collaborative. All the best to us all as we're in this together.
Thank you, Nicola. Rosemarie.
I'm going to just give some parting remarks about supervision. One of the things, I had a really big wobble last week. I've had a big year, and there've been some major changes, and then I had to then go into lockdown, and I was really struggling last week with, I'm used to working at home on my own, and all of a sudden members of my family were suddenly coming in on my workspace. So I was actually struggling last week. But I think what that's given me, because I worked through that, but supervision is important. We're all human. We need to be the best we can be, or we cannot mediate well. And that's what our clients are expecting from us. And so I want everybody to remember at least two things. The first one is to be self-aware. Now is the time to really understand what your head and your body is telling you, to be making sure that we are taking care of all of us, mental, emotional, physical, and make sure that we're getting the breaks that we need. Zoom can be quite intense. I'm finding it more intense, and I've been using Zoom for a very long time, but during lockdown, I think emotions are more intense. We don't have space. That's one of the things that we don't have, unless we happen to live in a large farm or a big area. Then we do have a bit of space, but even then it can feel confining. Not everyone has access to whatever it is that re-energizes them in this time of lockdown. So we just need to take care of ourselves so we can be better. The second thing is do reflections. It is really important now to do reflections, just to know what's triggering us and to take care of ourselves.
Thank you. Mark.
Thanks, Sue. I echo and endorse those wonderful comments by my co-panelists. It's been a super pleasure to be here. There are two other things that I wanted to say. Firstly, a huge congratulations to you, Sue, and Terry and Kate. The AMINZ team have just been absolutely amazing in terms of your resilience and drive and efforts during COVID-19. Everybody's working from home and yet rolling out, you know, just cracker sessions like this that are super pertinent to people right now in a really cool way. So huge big ups, Sue, to you and the team. And the only other thing I just wanted to say, since I've just, you know, got folk here, is, you know, well done. I'm really proud to be a Kiwi at the moment. I think that, you know, people are really making an effort in the most difficult of times. And just, you know, on a personal level, yeah, yay us and well done, and you know, we will get through this. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks so much, Mark. Panel, I really appreciate you being here today. I'd like to thank you all. This webinar will be available on YouTube as of Thursday this week, which is the day before Easter. I'd also like to pay particular thanks to my office assistant, who has refrained from barking or bringing in any live animals for the last hour. And for these small mercies, I am deeply grateful. So on that note, thank you. This concludes this session of AMINZ Doing Business Better. I'm Sue Wells, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.